How you doing today, Matt?
Hey, Chris, how's it going? I'm doing well, sir. What are you up to today?
A little of this, a little of that. Petting the robots, getting them to
That's
do all
right.
my work for me.
For anyone who's curious as to why we immediately jumped into it, Chris and I just spent some time dissecting our latest uses of AI right before we turned the mics hot here. And needless to say, like hopefully everyone else out there, we've been building some really cool stuff. I guess adversaries included in that, but we won't talk about that one too much. Blue teamers and defenders building awesome, cool stuff.
Yeah, the one that blows me away is I installed Olama on a old gaming machine that I built for my kids at the
Mm.
house here, and
Hmm.
it's wild that this stuff is so accessible. And when you run those LLMs locally, it's lightning fast. So if you haven't played with that, I recommend it. The requirements to run Olama are quite low, and I think there's even smaller models out there that can get you going. So just some fun
There
stuff.
are not the purpose of our normal episodes here, but since we're so on it, if anyone's curious, so Llama's good. You can download a tool called GPT for all. There's also something called LM Studio. You can go try these things out. And if anyone out there is kind of exploring or getting their feet wet in the AI space, and you're like, I want to play with some LLMs, but I don't want to send my data up to whatever, then go download it and run it locally. You'd be surprised what you can do with even a stock machine
hmm
in a lot of cases.
hmm and you may have noticed that this is a different format than we normally do because I've become very tired of reading the same intro every time, and we've been doing this long enough. I feel like we can just kind of vibe our way through it. So
They know who we are if
that's
you're
right.
listening. If you don't know who we are, I'm Matt and that's Chris.
Yeah, and we're here talking about cybersecurity intel shared by the InfoSec community.
That's
This
right.
is all sponsored by LimaCharlie. If you don't know who we are, you should go check us out at limacharlie.io. And we also have a community forum at community.limacharlie.io where you can kind of get this sort of intel more real time and learn about SecOps Cloud Platform, talk to your peers, all that good stuff. But yeah,
Awesome.
we're going to talk about some cybersecurity news, and I'll just kick it off.
You got one. What's the first one you got lined up here for us, Chris?
Okay, so Kai West, a 25-year-old British national, has been indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York for allegedly operating under the online alias IntelBroker. Prosecutors claim West was a central figure in a multi-year cybercrime campaign, collaborating with an online group called Cyber In Bomb, yikes, to infiltrate over 40 victim networks globally, including a U.S. telecommunications company, a municipal healthcare provider, and an internet service provider. Through unauthorized access, West and his co-conspirators extracted sensitive data like customer records, marketing materials, and personally identifiable information, then sold or distributed the data online. Over 158 posts linked to IntelBroker on a known hacker forum referred to in the complaint as Forum 1 show attempts to monetize stolen data sets for cryptocurrency, primarily Monero, or in exchange for platform credits. Monero, that's the
Always Monero.
favored cryptocurrency of cyber criminals.
It's always Monero.
All right. So West's activities appear to have spiked between January 2023 and February 2025. Within that time frame, prosecutors say he offered data for sale in 41 separate incidents and gave away or bartered data in 117 more. Forum 1 logs show that West operated openly, even taking on the role of forum owner for several months, which amplified the IntelBroker's persona's credibility and visibility. Notably, at least 16 of the posts had explicit price tags totaling more than 2.4 million. In total, the alleged damage to victims exceeds 25 million, a figure corroborated by victim reports reviewed by federal authorities. U.S. officials are currently seeking West's extradition from France, where he was arrested earlier in 2025. This doesn't sound like a very nice guy.
Does not sound like a very nice guy at all. No, sounds like quite the scoundrel, if you will, in the world of cybercrime and cybersecurity. As always, a hat tip to our folks over in the Justice Department and legal areas who are, indicting them and whatnot. I'm not going to lie, Chris, for a moment, I thought the guy's name was Key West, and I thought it was kind of cute and interesting. Key West, a British national, but it was Kai West. No offense, Mr. West. I apologize if that offended you, but you do some nefarious things, right? I find this one, as always, going to be a little interesting. I know you're going to talk more about some of the charges and things that Wes is facing here, but interestingly enough, just looking through kind of the article and the side of it here, the things that really capture my message or capture my focus here are like co-conspirators have cumulatively caused victim losses of at least $25 million. That's that's insane. Like, that's a lot of money for someone to cause in a very short period of time. Number one, obviously putting aside kind of like ransomware gang profits and things like that. This is a ridiculous amount of money for someone to be pulling in. And, doing it all through kind of like these light touch hacks and everything like that. I want to be very clear. When I say a light touch hack, this guy was stealing victims' data and selling it for millions in illicit funds. This was info stealing. IntelBroker was kind of the name of the forum, or at least the name that he went under. And when you're dealing with this type of thing, it furthers that whole idea that cybercrime really has become like a commoditized, segmented business. You've got a guy who's making 25 million or 25 million plus, or should I say causing 25 million in damages on a tiny little part of this, right? A tiny little part of this. Stealing data from a telecom company, healthcare provider, ISP, 40 other victims, stealing data and offering it for sale. That's it. We're not talking about some outlandish hacking group here. We're not talking about 0-day production and development and that kind of stuff. This is a tiny little part of it, and it may have led to subsequent breaches. It may have led to data theft. It may have led to, potential like password harvesting, credential harvesting, initial breaches and hacks and stuff like that. We don't know exactly where this all would lead to, but I always like zoom in on these, Chris, as a good example and a reminder for folks of even the tiniest little sliver of a cybercrime world can be extremely lucrative and profitable. Got my words right there, which I think just furthers the level of adversary access and adversary activity we see here.
Yeah. So one of the more critical aspects of this case is the way West operated as both seller and facilitator of breached data, often coordinating with a specific co-conspirator labeled CC-1 in court documents to conduct the intrusions. Around 46 of West's posts reference CC-1 and cite data obtained through a direct breach. Payment transactions were kept off record by using Monero, a privacy-centric cryptocurrency that complicates law enforcement's ability to trace fund flows. Authorities also linked West to the unauthorized access of an improperly configured server belonging to a U.S. telecom firm and to the breach of a municipal healthcare provider whose patient data was later advertised for sale. Data that included social security numbers, insurance details, and other highly sensitive information. The indictment includes 4 charges: conspiracy to commit computer intrusions, which garners you up to 5 years, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, which can garner you up to 20 years, accessing a protected computer to obtain information, another 5 years, and wire fraud for another 20 years. West is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The case is being handled by the Southern District's Complex Frauds and Cybercrime Unit, with Assistant U.S. Attorney Ryan B. Finkel leading prosecution efforts. International cooperation was critical. French, British, Spanish, and Dutch authorities all supported the investigation. U.S. officials have positioned this as part of a broader strategy to crack down on transnational cybercrime networks operating behind anonymizing technologies and digital currency platforms. So, wow, man, that's like, this dude's looking at up to 50 years in prison. Yeah. He's probably, in his early 20s if the model fits what we normally see. So literally the bulk of his life is likely to be spent behind bars because he was messing around on his computer. That's wild.
Imagine that. And I think we've talked about this before. He's 25. 25. Now, he's been charged at this point. But Chris, we've talked about this before of like, if we could just kind of channel or direct that amazing creative energy, like this guy probably could have been a really successful serial entrepreneur.
Sure.
I'm just thinking like that kind of motivation and drive, but unfortunately went a negative route. So Mr. West, I got, sorry, I keep having like Kanye West themes in my head as I say, Mr. West. To Kai West out there, like for folks watching, I mean, I know it seems lucrative and it seems like, I'm good in this thing. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. Right. Because there's a moment where everyone thinks about it.
Sure.
And I don't mean everyone in the world, but there's a moment where someone's like, I'm really good at computers. I'm really good at this thing, or I'm really good at convincing people to do a thing for me. Or I'm really good at, wow, I found these open databases and I just keep striking gold with this stuff that I find. And sometimes you become an amazing security researcher, and then there's a really thin line, and sometimes you become someone who sells this stuff on a dark web forum. And unfortunately, one of those will likely land you in a long-term prison sentence. Another one will land you in a pretty lucrative job. So just redirect that energy into another place. Now, I'm ignoring everything that it takes to get a job these days, right? I'm just saying there's a lot of energy that could be focused into something more creative or at least legitimate that
Hmm.
we would love to have you there for. I mean, Chris, I don't know about you. I'd happily, if I had to go to some sort of a VC interview meeting and the guy presenting was a new startup founder called Kai West, I'd be like, tell me your history. He was like, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I'm really good. That's sounds like a typical resume,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. And
you went the wrong
like,
way.
I can't imagine the cybercrime side is that much harder than the legit side, except on the
Yeah.
legit side, you get to sleep well and your money's yours. It's good.
And you're not always hiding behind like, am I going to get caught today? Am I going to get caught today?
Yeah.
Like I'm not worried that my door is going to get kicked in any moment. I
Yeah.
mean, for stuff I do on the computer, let's put it that way, right? This we'll leave the other side of it out, but for stuff I do on the computer, yeah. Anyways,
All right. All
I
right.
want this to be a little bit of a deterrent for folks
Yeah.
in the future who see this and are in that stage of because Chris, like once again, I don't know if they listen to this podcast. I really hope they do. But there is that key pivotal moment where someone's like, "Should I do this for nefarious reasons?" And it's like, "Don't. Like, come and join us and do this stuff for productive reasons and help make the world a better place. Don't be a criminal, please."
Yeah. Maybe a little harder, but the foundation's solid. And
Yeah, and you
yeah.
can sleep good at night.
Yeah. Okay, so this one's really interesting. Hunters International, a ransomware group that surfaced in 2023 and is believed to have originated from the now defunct Hive ransomware operation, has announced it is ceasing all activity. Alongside this shutdown, the group claims to be offering free decryptors to victims impacted by its ransomware campaigns. The group had targeted over 300 organizations globally using tactics that evolved over time, including deploying their custom access malware known as Sharp Rhino. Sharp Rhino was primarily used for initial access and persistence, enabling attackers to maintain control over compromised systems remotely. Back in October 2023, security researchers noted substantial code similarities between Hunters International malware and that of Hive, indicating that the Hive operators may have intentionally passed on their tooling. This suggested a calculated transfer of capability as opposed to code being reused without permission. This shift was emblematic of a broader trend in the ransomware ecosystem where threat actors rebrand, restructure, or merge operations in response to both international or internal dynamics and external pressure. So yeah, I'm really interested to learn about the motivation here. Like, did these guys just have a change of heart and decided that what they were doing was wrong and they were going to give the decryptor keys and move on to jobs?
I doubt it. I bet there's some little thing in there somewhere that, like most things, is, like I hate to say it, Chris, but it's, sometimes a business closes and opens under a new name because there's some sort of compliance pressure or something like that. Not that these guys are dealing with compliance pressures, but I don't know, like maybe there's, four founders and one of them wants to exit and go live in a non-extradition country. And he's like, well, I still have a claim to that name, Hunters International.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, screw it, shut it down, open up under a new thing. Or maybe they disbanded, or maybe they came together like a tribute band and now they're all going to disband back to their original sources. Who knows? But I find it interesting to hear because if you're profitable, this is like a little bit of a juxtaposition to what we talked about in our last one. If you're profitable and you're making a ton of money, why on earth would you shut down, especially if you've already decided that criminal activity is something you're okay with doing, right? Now, kind of looking through this here, researchers at Group IB stated that Hunters International was planning to close the project and rebrand as World Leaks, an extortion-only operation. So here they've decided, Chris, we are much better at extorting people than we are at ransoming them. So I'm just going to go to that end of the supply chain. And I don't know, maybe that's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah.
Maybe at one point you're in the middle of the supply chain and then you decide you want to be at the end of the supply chain. So you restructure, issue a new business plan, designate owners and co-owners and people involved and whatnot and start another business. And next thing you know, you're like, hey, I have all my contacts over here, right? Hopefully everyone's picking up on my underlying subtext of sarcasm. But when you think about ransomware as a business model here, it's really easy to see how like someone could just kind of close up shop and say, I don't want to focus on this part. I want to focus on that part. And that's exactly what's happening here is like, we're better at extortion. So we're just going to move towards it. And a lot of times it really is just, what are we best at? The other side of this coin is there are some ransomware authors, some malware authors out there who are really good at writing ransom code or really good at evading EDR. And as we've talked about ransomware as a service before, as a giant, massive industry, that's the service. Chris, I remember a few months ago we talked about an article where I think someone had created basically like an obfuscation compression site where you could upload your malware. It would compress it into a zip file that was not detected by ADR tools or AV and would just provide it back to you. And it was like $20 a pop
Yeah.
or something like that. Like
Yeah.
imagine how niche that is. Someone's making a living off of that,
Yeah.
and it's a recognition of skills and then a way to market those skills. And I think that's what we're seeing happen here.
So under this new iteration, World Leaks, they forego file encryption entirely and focus solely on data theft and publication to extort victims. World Leaks went live in early 2025 and has since listed 20 organizations on its leak site hosted on the Tor network. Of those, data from 17 victims has already been made accessible. This pivot reflects a larger shift away from encryption-based extortion to pure data theft models, which may reduce operational risk for the attackers while still achieving extortion goals. By removing encryption, threat actors avoid technical hurdles like malware development and the management of encryption keys, while still applying pressure to victims through reputational and regulatory threats. Ha! So wow, these guys just got lazy.
Maybe they made enough money they can afford to be lazy. You never know. But yeah, I'm with you on this one. This is a really quick, easy, interesting change of heart.
Yeah, so we'll take it though. Hopefully, some victims got those encryption keys and it helped them
Yeah.
recover.
That's the
Okay,
part I like the most is that they decided when they disbanded to say, you know what, for anyone who's locked up, let's go ahead and issue some free decryptors as well because we'll be back to extort them in a couple months.
yeah. All right. So hackers in Brazil managed to steal nearly 140 million USD from 6 banks by exploiting insider access at a financial technology firm called C&M, which provides connectivity services to financial institutions and the Brazilian Central Bank. The breach occurred on June 30th and was facilitated by, oh, man, I don't even know where to start with this one. Joa Nazarene Roque, a C&M employee who sold his credentials for just $920. This initial access enabled the attackers to infiltrate a highly sensitive system connected to the central bank's infrastructure. Beyond just handing over login credentials, Roque actively supported the operation by executing commands within the C&M system as instructed by the attackers. He used Notion, a collaboration platform, to communicate with the attackers and received a second payment of approximately $1,850 for his continued cooperation. Roque attempted to cover his tracks by frequently changing his mobile devices every 15 days. Nonetheless, he was arrested by Sao Paulo police just 3 days after the breach. The method of recruitment is notable as well. Interesting.
$920
Yeah, so
for
for
credentials.
about $2,700, this guy is gonna be up the creek.
Can you imagine that though? I mean, just think about that. For $920, this guy's selling credentials and adversaries were able to use that. Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, plus an additional 1850. So
Yeah,
somewhere what? Yeah, 20. Let's say 2,800. We'll
yeah,
round up. Maybe he found a tip in there, or I don't know, a $20 bill on the floor. Who knows? But what a wild so one of the things that I talk about with a lot of companies that I work with either in training or in discussion, Chris, is kind of this idea of insider threat. And a lot of times we hear about them and sometimes it's like, oh, someone didn't change a password, so it was like an inadvertent insider threat. Like they didn't change a password like they were supposed to, their account was out of policy and that led to a thing. But in this case right here, this is a straight up like I'm selling my credentials off. Someone convinced him to do it for the low, paltry sum of 2,800 total. And I can only imagine what that conversation was like. Like, hey, I'm going to give you an extra 500. I'm going to give you an
yeah,
extra 1,000. And you're like, oh man, this is great. I'm making 2,800 for doing nothing. And then
yeah,
the next day you walk in and the bank's like, we're now bankrupt. And it's
yeah,
like, all I got was 2,800 out of that. Like I should have asked for more, right? This goes to show though, just how thin that line is. And maybe this is our trend for today's episode. This goes to show just how thin that line is between I have access to things and I could easily sell this off. And unfortunately, when insider threat bites, sometimes it bites really hard. I can only imagine the stressful time that the internal security and maybe even the incident response team went through trying to figure this out. Because there's a moment in any investigation where when you realize a legitimate account is the thing that's done something wrong, that's the moment when like a light switch flips and you're like, oh my gosh, we have to look at every single thing this guy's been doing. And then it just all sticks out like a sore thumb. right?
Mhm.
Then it's like, oh my gosh, here's systems he was in, he wasn't supposed to be accessing. Here's out of bound communications. Here's external login hours. Here's frequent password changes, account management that's irregular. I mean, everything's just like glaring at you right there, and you're like, how did we miss this? So a huge like, little bit of remorse out there to the security team. I can only imagine the pain you went through, but guys, insider threat is a real thing. It's still out there, and it's an extremely expensive threat as well.
Yeah. So Roque was reportedly approached by the attackers as he was leaving a bar, highlighting a deliberate and premeditated approach to targeting employees perceived as vulnerable. This reflects similar tactics seen in a recent case involving Coinbase, where customer service agents in India were socially engineered and bribed for access. It signals an increasing trend of threat actors leveraging personal contact and human factors to bypass hardened technical controls. Authorities in Brazil are conducting 3 separate investigations into the breach, but no information has been shared about the identity or origin of the hacking group. Meanwhile, blockchain investigator Zach XBT reported that roughly 30 to 40 million of the stolen funds have already been laundered through cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USDT via a combination of exchanges and OTC markets in Latin America. He is reportedly tracking the attackers' wallets and assisting law enforcement in attempting to freeze the stolen assets. C&M has since issued a statement emphasizing that the attack was not the result of a technical vulnerability, but rather a targeted social engineering campaign. The company stated that its internal monitoring system played a key role in identifying the suspicious activity and contributed to the swift police response. No additional technical indicators of compromise or attack chain details have been released so far. So yeah, I think I've talked about this previously before. I think we're going to see more and more of this as time goes on. I think the industry as a whole is technology as an industry as a whole is getting its hands around cybersecurity, at least the low hanging fruit stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
am I going to spend 6 months and tens of thousands of dollars in R&D, or can I just go, hang out outside of the local pub and bribe buddy with 25 or 2,800 bucks to go press some buttons for me?
Yeah. I think the other thing that's a little crazy here is also the I think the other crazy part here, Chris, is kind of the amount of research that went into this from an adversarial perspective on the back end is, it's not like you go to a bar and you're like, hey, does anyone here work at a bank? I want to talk to you. This is, we know exactly who this person was. We knew what to approach him with. And, it just goes to show the level of research that goes into what ultimately matriculates into a insider threat.
But is it research or is it an AI script? This is like something I've talked to about with somebody on the show before, where, especially at a large company monitoring social media for signs of financial distress, a company with 5,000 folks, you could probably automate some of the key indicators, and then from there you'd have to do some research, but like it's probably getting easier to identify those people.
Yeah. So at some point, Chris, there's a switch over to the kinetic side of things.
Mm-hmm.
At some point there is, and it may be kind of a funnel, right? Where you're like, okay, here's 100 potential prospects. Here's 50, maybe single males. I don't know. I'm just saying, right? Here's 50 single males. Here's 10 of them who live in this neighborhood or whatever, or 10 of them who, have recently posted about kind of financial distress or something. Like, you can kind of whittle the algorithm down, but eventually there's a point where, as an adversarial group, right? And I look at it like this, Chris, you've got 2 massive storm clouds on either side. One of them is a list of potential targets. The other one is the adversary themselves. And at some point, those storm clouds condense to 2 people talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that conversation was, hey, and eventually the line has to be said. I want you to give me your username and password. And I want you to tell me how to access this system. Eventually that sentence has to come out in some way, shape, or form. And when that switch happens, there's so much research that goes into it, because the other side of it is they could show up to the next meeting with a wire or police or, law enforcement ready to go. And I feel like it's like there's a lot of, maybe it's the Hollywood side of me, but there's a lot of other parts of this where there's a lot of research that goes into, can we successfully convert this guy into our mole? And then I talk about storm clouds on either side, right? So now I have one person, but the storm cloud of the adversary never gets smaller, because they take that access and hand it off to some extremely technical people who then are able to create a $140 million bank heist out of this. I mean, let's put it another way, Chris. This guy had access to systems that resulted in a multi-$100 million, $140 million transit or illicit transfer. That's what he had access to. And, of course, we're not going to see any technical indicators that may lead up to this, because the technical indicators are someone walked through the bank system using legitimate credentials.
Yeah.
I mean, the indicators are, here's this playbook of how to do this guy's job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, wow, stuff to watch out for. Okay, so last up, several critical vulnerabilities in Ruckus Network's management product, Virtual Smart Zone, or VSZ, and Ruckus Network Director, or RND, remain unpatched, leaving large-scale Wi-Fi environments at risk to complete compromise. The flaws disclosed by Noam Moshe from Clarity's Team 82 to CERT/CC include unauthenticated remote code execution, hard-coded credentials, and weak cryptographic implementations. Despite coordinated disclosure efforts, both Ruckus Networks and its parent company, CommScope, have not responded, and no patches are currently available. Ouch! The VSC platform, which controls tens of thousands of access points and client devices, suffers from a variety of high-impact CVEs, which allow attackers to bypass authentication via crafted HTTP headers combined with valid API keys. Another CVE involves hard-coded SSH keys, granting root-level access to any actor with network visibility. Meanwhile, a couple more CVEs allow for unsanitized command execution, giving authenticated users the ability to inject operating system commands and potentially pivot further into the environment. These issues mean that attackers with even limited access could achieve full administrative control over Wi-Fi infrastructure. Wow, that's horrid. And for them to not make any comment or respond to or make any patches, I mean, what is happening here?
Yeah. Neither CERT/CC nor Moshe were able to contact them, as you mentioned in per the article here. And Chris, let's be clear. I think you said a handful or a couple of CVEs. There's 10.
There's a lot, isn't there?
There's a lot. And this is all stuff like hard-coded default public-private SSH keys, hard-coded back-end JWT secret, jailed environment with a built-in jailbreak, a root privileged user with hard-coded public-private SSH keys. I mean, Chris, does the software engineer in you ever just are you crying inside when you read this type of stuff? Hard-coded root-level credentials inside of public-facing products that they were made money off of by selling to people.
Yeah, there's a lot of poor practice here. I don't even know what to say. And even it's the after the fact behavior, coming out and saying, hey, yeah, we made a mistake. Here's a patch. We're really sorry. Let us help you get this fixed. We learned our lesson. That's what you want to do.
At least Oracle denied it.
Yeah. But sticking your head in the sand and hoping it goes away is just gonna bring more attention to you. So yeah, shame on these guys for sure.
I feel like at this rate, Chris, now I don't know anybody at Ruckus Networks or CommScope or anything like that. I don't know anyone at these places, or Ruckus Wireless, whatever company name we want to use here. I'm just going to say, at this level, do you think maybe they went to the developers and were like, guys, we have all these CVs, we need to fix it. And someone was like, I don't know how to do this without hard-coded creds. And it was does anyone here know how to build anything at this level?
Yeah.
This wasn't one CVE with a oopsie inside of it. This is let me see if I can count the number of times hard-coded shows up inside of this here. So across this list of 10 CVEs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 had, three hard-coded in the CVE description. 60% of their CVEs had some of the worst programming practices inside of them. Now, I'm not going to say I've never hard-coded anything, but I've never sold public-facing wireless devices that had secret root accounts jailed and backdoors inside of them. So
I feel like this might be a case where you have a self-taught developer that's knows enough to be dangerous, gets a job that doesn't have very much oversight, and the things are working, so nobody's looking too close, and then this kind of stuff falls out. So
Chris, I had another theory when I read over this morning. Maybe the company wanted to cause a ruckus. And they did so by releasing extremely insecure software.
I think I'm going to get a rim shot sound effect, because these come out here quite regularly. Yeah.
Just saying, hey, if your name is Ruckus Networks and you're releasing this kind of stuff, I mean, you are living up to your name. Maybe that's why they haven't answered. They're too busy partying, This guy, this developer over here, he is such a ruckus, such a representative of the ruckus ethos that he published software with tens. Anyways.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's move on. I lied. There is one more. I forgot I threw an extra one on here.
Okay.
Just because it's a notable Patch Tuesday.
We can't skip those.
Yeah, Microsoft has just released security updates addressing 130 vulnerabilities across its product line as part of its July 2025 Patch Tuesday. Among them is a previously disclosed flaw in SQL Server, tracked as CVE, I'm not going to read, which carries a CVSS score of 7.5. The vulnerability is categorized as an improper input validation issue and may allow unauthenticated attackers to leak sensitive information over a network. While Microsoft confirmed that the issue was publicly disclosed before a fix was available, it also stated that there's no evidence of active exploitation. The company is urging users to update their SQL Server installations and drivers, specifically recommending OLE DB driver versions 18 or 19, which contain mitigations for this flaw. This disclosure is notable not just for the vulnerability itself, but because it ends an 11-month stretch during which Microsoft consistently addressed zero-day vulnerabilities in its Patch Tuesday cycles. Even though the CVE was publicly known before patching, it was not exploited in the wild as a zero-day. Beyond SQL Server, this patch set includes approximately a dozen critical severity vulnerabilities, 10 of which would result in remote code execution. These include high-risk flaws in components such as the SPNEGO extended negotiation security mechanism, SharePoint, and the Kerbos Key Distribution Center proxy service, which is probably something you want to get sorted.
I'm just going to say, like any Patch Tuesday, and as one of the mottos of this show has been, just patch, patch, patch. Do your best to get patches implemented if you can. For anyone, we've talked about this at length. If you've been a repeat episode listener, you already know kind of our thoughts on what patches are and how we feel about them. But if you're someone who's in that role who needs to assess it, please don't ever take the stance of not yet publicly exploited as a reason not to apply something. If you were walking through the park and you saw a dangerous weapon sitting on a picnic table, you'd probably want to notify authorities that it was there. But if you called authorities and said, hey, there's a dangerous weapon here, and the authorities responded with, well, has anyone been stabbed yet? And you were like, no. And they're like, all right, just leave it there. You'd be like, this situation's crazy. Having an active vulnerability running in your environment and then saying, has anyone exploited it yet? No. Whatever, is not the risk assessment you want to take. Okay?
Yep.
Don't wait for it to show up on the KEV, the CISA's known exploited vulnerability list. Patch first, and then you don't have to be one of the test subjects for whatever adversary writes the first POC for this.
And in another way, you can sleep good at night.
And another way to sleep good at night, not just don't be a bad person, but also patch your systems.
All right. So Microsoft Office also received critical updates addressing 2 local code execution bugs. These vulnerabilities rely on user interaction, such as opening a malicious document to be exploited. Additionally, a particularly concerning remote code execution bug was fixed in the Windows Connected Devices Platform service. This use after free vulnerability allows unauthenticated attackers to send specially crafted traffic to devices with nearby sharing enabled. However, successful exploitation also requires a user to perform specific actions, which may reduce a practical risk depending on how widely the nearby sharing feature is deployed and used. Of the total 130 vulnerabilities patched, privilege escalation issues made up for the largest category with 53 fixes, followed by 41 for remote code execution, 18 for information disclosure, and the remainder spread across security bypass, denial of service, and spoofing. As usual, systems with automatic updates enabled will receive these patches without user intervention, but manual patching is advised for environments that do not use auto-update. Given the critical nature of many of these vulnerabilities, especially those that could be triggered remotely without authentication, enterprise administrators should prioritize testing and deploying these updates across affected systems. So yeah, that one was a mouthful, but I think good to get out there just to, I think we can get pretty passive with like the Patch Tuesdays and stuff like that. But this one seems like you want to move on it pretty quick.
Yeah, let's not get passive with these, please. Yeah. Let's keep it going.
All right, Matt, we're at the end of another one, and we freestyled this one a little bit, but I had fun. I think it was good.
Likewise. Sounds good, sir. As always, looking forward to it, and I'll talk to you on the next one.
All right. Take care, sir.
See ya.